Greetings class, this is Professor Brown and this is going to be a tutorial video for Lab 2, the Windows Server installations for CST-158 Server Plus. So, you should see my screen here where I have VMware, and with that we should be able to go ahead and create our VM shells. What I always suggest everybody to do is to look at your lab document first. So let's go ahead and download that and open it up. And I really want you to, as you go through these labs, read through all of the steps first. Look at the screenshots, kind of have an understanding of what's going on before you just try to, plod through it. Because I think you'll get a better understanding and grasp of the technology in doing it that way. These labs have evolved over time. They've gone from 2012 to 2016, now to Server 2019. So there's some information that's in here. I try to keep updating them, every time. So take a look here at the topology. We need to ensure that our topology is going to match our VM net. One side note is, if you're doing this in VirtualBox, you can totally do this in VirtualBox. I suggest that you get VMware, at least the trial, the 30-day trial, so you can do these server installs. But if you notice here, I have the server set up on a network of 192.168.1. All right, so we need to ensure that our network that we are using is set up on 192.168.1. That may or may, that's not in this particular document. That's why I'm making the video, because I want to give you every advantage here. So let's look up virtual network. So type the Windows and look up virtual network editor for VMware. And if you're doing this on the Mac, you should have a similar program. If you just do a search for a virtual network, you should come up with VMware Virtual Network Editor under VMware Fusion. Alright, so we want to take a look at this VMnet 8, which is our Nat Network. The Nat Network allows our VMs to have internet access. Alright, and as you can see here, my subnet is set as 192.168.10. Well, that's not going to work, because I have in the lab, we're on 192.168.1. At least that's what's in my topology. That's what I have set up here for the Windows servers. Alright, the second Windows server is going to be Dhcp. It'll get its IP automatically, but the first one is going to be statically assigned. That's why this one's going to be named static. So to change that, alright, make sure that you have VMnet 8 selected. Come down here to change settings. Click on that, because you have to give administrator access. So if a little Windows pops up there, answer yes. Alright. And now you can select this and give it a different IP address. Alright. So since it's set up for NAT, you can set the NAT settings here. But here's where you're going to change that. So in my case, I'm going to change it from 10 to 1. That's pretty much it. Alright. I need to change the DHCP settings as well, because they're set here for 10. I need to make those 1. Alright. And you'll notice that the IP address of my Windows server is 192.168.1.200. So I need to make my DHCP scope like higher than that or lower than that, or make sure it's not in this scope. So let's do 129 to 199. That'll work just as long as that above that, because in the next lab, the Fedora server is going to have a different IP as well. As you can see, it's going to have 210. So we want to make sure that those don't overlap one another. So, well, 129 to 199 will work just fine. And that's all we need to do. We don't need to set the NAT settings, but we can take a look at them. See the gateway IP? We need to change that as well. So let's change that to 1.2. Okay. And we can keep everything here pretty much the same. We'll click OK. We'll click OK. Now it'll take a couple of minutes for it to make the changes, depending on your CPU and RAM and all that good stuff. To check that out, just as a sanity check, if you click the Windows button, you type command, and on Mac, if you just open up a terminal and you do ifconfig, in Windows it's ipconfig all. If you do that, I'll get a lot, so I'm going to pipe it so I can page through it, so I don't scroll back and forth, and hit enter. If I hit enter, I can go one at a time. I'm going to look for my Nat networks. That's my VirtualBox network, because I have VirtualBox on this machine as well. Alright, wireless adapter, Ethernet adapter, VMnet 1. So there's VMnet 1, VMnet 2. We're looking for VMnet 8, VMnet 3, VMnet 4. And you might not have as many VMnets as me. You might just have like 0, 1, and 8, which is perfectly fine. And there's VMnet 8, and you can see that I have set it as 192.168.1.1, but I don't have a default gateway. Actually, none of my VMnets have a default gateway. That's okay. So I know that I set it to 1.2, so it should be just fine. So we can close that out, and then we can start now on setting up our shell for VMware. So let's go ahead and do that. So to set up the shell, actually, while we're setting up the shell, let's do one thing. Let's get the server install. So if I just do a simple Google search on download server 2019 ISO, that first link that comes up will be the Windows Server Evaluation Center. You can get 180-day, it's a 6-month trial. Alright, it should pop up here. You need just Windows Server 2019. And looky there, 2022 is coming out next year. Can't wait for that. That'll be fun. But Server 2019, you want the ISO. Click Continue. Put in all this information. And then it will give you a download window. Download that ISO. Alright. Now, after I downloaded my ISO, I moved it to my virtual machines folder, which is under Documents in Windows. I'm not sure where that is in Mac, but you should be able to find it, hopefully relatively easily, under your VMware Fusion if you're using a Mac. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Move that out of the way. Now back to VMware. We're going to create 2 shells, and we're going to do this install twice. We're going to do it for a static IP and then one for DHCP. So let's go to File, New Virtual Machine, and you'll repeat this process twice. You're going to make it custom. Next. And this is going to be default, the hardware compatibility. Next. You're going to install the operating system later. Usually it might be like you'll look for an install file, but you're going to install that later, so click Next. It's going to be Microsoft Windows, and under here you're not going to find a Server 2019, unfortunately. So if you select either Server 2016, or you can also select Windows 10 x64, either one of them will work just fine. Click Next. Alright, the virtual machine name, I think I had to change this just a little bit. It's Windows-Server 2019 static. Okay, that'll be for the first server. Click Next. Now here's a big one. So we need to change this from UEFI, the firmware type, to BIOS. So if you use UEFI, it's not going to detect the operating system. I'll click Next. You can keep 2 processors and 1 core per processor. That's perfectly fine. If you have a higher end processor like an i7 or a Ryzen 7, you could go 2 and 2. I'm going to keep it at 2 and 1. For the RAM, you can keep it at 2 gigs, but if you have more RAM, the better. The faster it'll install, the faster it'll do tasks, etc. I'm going to give mine 4 gigs because I have 32 gigs of RAM on my system, so I can afford it. But if you're only running like 8 gigs, you can just give each Windows server 2 and your Fedora server 1, and you'll be just fine. If you have anything less than 8 gigs, then you might have to do 1 gig for each Windows server, and then 512 megabytes for your Fedora server, and the like. So be wary of how much RAM you're giving it. We're going to select the Nat Network because we've already configured it. We're going to keep the LSI logic for the I/O controller, and for the disk type, we're going to change that to SCSI. SCSI. Click Next. We're going to create a new virtual disk. We're going to keep it at 60 gigs and split into multiple files. And we're going to keep this disk file name default. Okay, and that's it. You can review all your hardware configurations, but you're pretty much done. We can click Finish. Okay, and you'll notice that in your virtual machines directory, you have a new folder. Okay, so, and you'll also notice in VMware, you have a new tab. Okay, with your Server 2019 static. So from here, what we need to do is we need to click on the CD DVD, and change that to use ISO image, and then direct VMware to point to that ISO that we downloaded from Microsoft for our Server 2019. So we're going to click Browse, and I put it again in my Documents Virtual Machines folder. It's right there. So if you didn't do that, if it's still in your Downloads folder, this is fine. You can click on it there. It doesn't matter really where the file is as long as you find the file and select it. Click Open. Okay, and then we're done. So now all we do is click on Power on the Virtual Machine. All right, and we'll go through the installation process. The installation process will take a little bit of time, but I'll pause here and there so that we can speed the video up a little bit. So with Windows Server 2019, make sure that everything's kind of default here. US keyboard, English, and click into the window, and then you'll click Next, and you'll click Install Now. Again, I think this says like 2016 in my lab, so apologies for that. But it's pretty much the same type of setup. Okay. So now for the selection of the type of install, what you need to do with this is you can use Windows Server Standard or Data Center. If you use Data Center, it's going to have Hyper-V on it. It's going to take up more disk space. I want to go ahead and just go with Standard Edition, but I want to make sure that I use a desktop experience, because if I just do this, it's just going to install as a command line and PowerShell only, which we don't want. We're going to set it up to have the GUI, the UI. Okay, so we'll click Next. Alright, accept the EULA and user license agreement. And next. And this is going to be a custom install. So click the one on the bottom. And then it should detect your disk, which is fine. You can just click Next. You don't need to reformat it or anything like that. And then it's going to go through the installation process. So we're going to let this run through. It should run through and give you check marks all the way over here. And I'll be back here in just, well, it'll seem like it's a few seconds to you, but it'll be a few minutes for this to install. Okay, so it has finished up, and now it's going to restart. And if you want to get out of the inside window here, if you're ever stuck and you can't get your cursor back, the hotkey is Control and Alt. The Control key and the Alt key simultaneously. That'll get you your cursor back. I love how Windows takes like no time at all to install anymore, especially in a VM. Okay. You can click this, I finished installing, here at the bottom. That's fine. And hopefully our desktop will come back up and we'll set our passwords and everything else. Yep, here's our password screen. So I think, yeah, if you're doing this yourself, you can set your password to wherever you want to. But I think in the document, oh my gosh, let me find it here. Yeah, here it is. So I have you set it to CST-CCC 2019 exclamation point. There it is. Yeah, that's right here. CST-CCC 2019 exclamation point. So we can do that. So capital CST, Lilc 2019 exclamation point, and so nice you do it twice. So they match, and click finish. Now finalize your settings, and vada ving. Now if you hit the Control Alt and Insert key, don't hit Control Alt Delete, because if you hit Control Alt Delete, you'll go back to, you know, your task manager. So Control Alt Insert, and then if you do that CST CCC 2019 exclamation point, you will log in and get to the desktop. Okay. All right, yay, first screenshot. So screenshot that and put that into your, make sure you provide screenshots for your uploads. So it's going to say, hey, I detected a network. You'll click yes, and just kind of let that go. So now we get to repeat this process over again for our DHCP. Ah, wait, I forgot something. Hold on. I apologize. I am not done yet. So we need to click on the IPv4 address and assign DHCP link. So if we go to local server, again, I'm following along in here as well. And if we scroll over here a little bit and find it's here, I'm just missing it. Ethernet 0 IPv4 address assigned. Click on that. That brings this up. If you right click and go to properties, and you find Internet Protocol version 4 TCP/IP v4, click properties, and then you're going to select the lower radio button and put in your IP address. Oh, it might help if I hit number lock. Yep, .1.200. Again, that should be in your lab. Yeah, 192.168.1.200. And your default gateway can be .1 or .2. Make it .2. Just FYI. So 192.168.1.2. And then your DNS can be 4222 and 8888. Those are public. Those are public DNS servers. And then click OK. And then click close, and close that one out. And then answer your questions at the end. You will need to install your DHCP server as well. So, or your server that uses DHCP. So what you can do is you can close this down, shut it down if you like. I am just going to make a new VM, and I'm going to go through this like extremely fast. Same, everything was the same. Okay, next, Windows 2016. The name this time is going to be Windows dash server dash 2019 dash DHCP. Okay, so make sure it has a different name. Again, BIOS. This is the big one here. This is one that messes everybody up. 2-in-1 is fine. Again, 2 gigs is fine. I'm going to give it 4 because I have the RAM to do so. It's going to be on the Nat Network, LSI Logic, and SCSI for the hard disk type. Create new disk, 60. Yeah, same files. Keep the name default. Finish. All right. You'll see another tab. It'll pop up here. Again, go back to that CD DVD. Go and find that file for your Windows ISO. Okay. Click OK. And go through and do it all over again. The only thing you do not have to do is set that IP address at the end. So once you get there, you do not have to set the IP address. It'll get a DHCP address on its own, and it'll be just fine. Okay? The same password, the same steps. Install now. And that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. Just at the very end, you do not have to do that IP change. And, screenshots of each answer the questions in number 26. Your standard evaluation desktop experience. And yeah. Accept the EULA. Here's where you do the custom. Do not do the upgrade. Do the custom. Select your disk that is found. Yeah, and that's it. Let it install, and you're all done. Set your password to the capital C, capital S, capital T, little c, little c, little c, 2019 exclamation point, and you're all done with this lab. So hope you enjoy it. Hope you learn a little bit from it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.